Kelly is a wonderful resource for nonprofits, and we're so happy to be working with her. And yeah, so it's 2 o'clock. I figured we can get the ball rolling with our webinar today. So thank you all for joining so far. There's already so many of you on. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about donor thank yous and really how to steward those donors who gave during year end to make sure that you keep them for the long haul. So it's all about building donor relationships and, of course, making your donors feel thanked. Teaching our webinar today is Kelly McLaughlin. She is your nonprofit coach and has been working with nonprofits over the last over a decade now to help them grow their fundraising. And it's been lovely having Kelly partner with us on courses in the past and webinars. And so thank you again, Kelly, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Candace. Always excited to work with CauseVox. It's always fun.
Thanks. It's always good. Always good.
Always
Good time.
fun.
All right, I'll let you kind of take it away from here.
I am going to share my screen and we will get this party started. Let's see. We seeing my slides?
Yep.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Slides and only slides. My computer's very tired. I think all of our computers are very tired, right? So donor thank yous, the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Hold on just a second. Let's see, Candace, these are a couple of your slides. Can I advance through these?
Sure. So yeah, just to for all of you who are unfamiliar with CauseVox, we're a digital fundraising platform that helps you raise more with less effort. You can run donation pages, crowdfunding, and peer-to-peer fundraising with CauseVox. As of late, virtual fundraising events have been huge. We've seen virtual galas and virtual walkathons and all of that good stuff on our platform. And we just try to make it really easy for nonprofits to get their digital fundraising up and running. If you are interested in learning more, you can go to causevox.com or just reach out to us directly. You can even just chat us in, and I'd love to follow up with you if you're interested in getting started with CauseVox. So that's my little CauseVox elevator pitch.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kelly.
No worries. All right. So what we're going to learn today. So what I want you to walk away with at the end of this session is an understanding why thank yous matter in our ability to build relationships with donors and create repeat giving. I saw that in some of the comments in the chat. So definitely that's a big thing I want you to take away. What you can do beyond an email autoresponder to make your donors feel loved and appreciated, but in ways that don't necessarily require a lot of time and effort from your nonprofit's part. Then what we also want to talk about is how we show our gratitude year round. So I really like to say that saying thanks isn't just for right after you get the gift, it's for all the time. And then last, I want to talk about how do we actually do this? How do we say thank you? Because I see a lot of nonprofits getting thank you wrong. And so what makes a good thank you touch and what's effective in this kind of space? First, Candace did a wonderful introduction, but I am Kelly McLaughlin. I am your nonprofit coach. FIT stands for Focus, Implement, and Transform. That's how I like to think about the processes that I work through. I am an independent nonprofit consultant based in Washington, D.C., and I've been in fundraising and nonprofit management for about 12 years now. In particular, I specialize in building individual giving programs. I've built programs from the ground up. I've crafted programs that raise $1 million a year. And I've spent a number of years at bigger nonprofits. And then I've taken kind of the principles that I learned there and figured out how to run those same management and fundraising processes at smaller nonprofits in ways that smaller nonprofits can actually handle and implement. So really my focus is on the smaller nonprofits, like 5 staff or smaller. That's where my heart really is. I think a lot of you folks are doing such great work. So Getting into the meat of the matter. Why do thank yous matter? I think that's something we don't think about. It's just nice manners. But there's a lot of reasons why thank yous are important, right? So thank yous matter because our donors' feelings matters. Donors aren't ATMs. You can't just go put in a number and withdraw cash, right? I have so many organizations come to me asking if there's a simple formula, and there really isn't. Donors are people with pasts. They have dreams, they have goals, and they give to your organization because you are making some kind of change they want to see in the world. And your organization is their means of achieving their dreams and their goals, right? That's why they give. Unfortunately, I think what we do in the nonprofit world is we ask and we ask and we ask, and then a donor gives. They give an autoresponder, and then they get added to an email list where they get asked and asked and asked again. And I think about not how your nonprofit treats donors, but how have other nonprofits that you have given to treated you? And do you feel like you're treated like an ATM by those organizations? And then I want you to like dig deep and think about, are you doing the same thing to your donors, right? How does it feel to be a donor in the nonprofit space right now? And when we treat our donors like ATMs, it's no wonder that our donation retention, our donor retention rate is terrible. According to the Association for Fundraising Professionals, this is from their 2018 Fundraising Effectiveness Project Report. Industry-wide retention, that's like the nonprofit industry as a whole, not any individual organization, only retained 48% of its donors. And that's pretty terrible. That means we're losing half of the people who donate, and not that they just don't give again to the same nonprofit, they don't give again to nonprofits. And so when we're spoiling the pool, when we're not saying thank you, when we're not telling donors they matter, they don't just leave us, they leave nonprofits. And that's really upsetting to me. And a lot of clients that I start working with have retention rates in the teens and 20s. Like that's not uncommon. And more often what I see is organizations don't even know how to calculate that statistic. So, but what you can count on is if you don't say thank you and all you do is worry about solicitations, your donor retention rate is not going to be great. But having a robust thank you and gratitude process in place makes your donors feel special, included, appreciated, and you can do great thank yous when you keep in mind that the main purpose of doing thank yous and showing gratitude is to reassure your donors that you are in fact achieving their dreams, right? That you are creating the change that they believe in, that you're making the difference that they invested in you to make, right? And so thank you. We've got to stop thinking about donations as transactions and more as investments, right? Our donors are invested in our mission and the change that we're making. And I think that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. And thank yous, we also have to keep in mind that thank yous are part of a larger process that's known as the donor pipeline, or sometimes it's called a donor funnel or a marketing pipeline, that kind of thing. And this is how I treat the donor pipeline. And you'll notice that the way I conceive of our donor relationships, solicitations are in smack in the middle. But unfortunately, so much of the time we're just circling around solicitation. How do we just keep them giving? How do we keep them giving? And we just circle around the solicitation without thinking about that this is a relationship. And so I like to compare our donor relationships with a romantic relationship. And asking, again, comes in the middle. If somebody asked you to marry them on the first date, I would think you would run screaming, right? Like that would be terrifying. They don't know you well enough, right? By the same token, if somebody asked you to marry them and you got married and then they didn't speak to you again after the wedding, that would indicate some issues as well. But unfortunately, that's kind of how we treat our donors. So the donor pipeline, the way I like to think about it is identification is finding the person, right? How do we go from the wide world of all people to the people that we're going to resonate with, who believe what we believe, share our values, and have similar dreams for the future, right? How do we find that person or those people when we're talking about nonprofit donors? Cultivation is the dating stage, right? So we get to know the person, their likes and their dislikes. For donors, this is figuring out, why do they give? What do they believe in? Do they have a personal connection to your cause? Do they have moral convictions that make them want to support your cause? Or is it a past experience? I see so often like medical associations, cancer, that kind of thing. People have lost someone or have had a brush with that disease in the past, and so there's a reason that they're interested in a nonprofit like that. And then solicitation is in the middle. It's the proposal. You say, are you ready for a deeper, more committed relationship? And when your donor gives, they say yes. Okay, they're saying yes, I want a deeper relationship with you. And so that's not the end of the relationship, right? That's not the end goal. Once they have said yes, it's time for a deeper, more committed relationship from them to your organization and from your organization to your donor. And I think we don't focus on that so much. And so if you ask for support and they say yes, they're committed to you. They want to help you achieve your mission. And so that the next step would be stewardship. And I like to liken this to working on a relationship, right? Does that person feel heard? Do they feel seen? Do they feel appreciated? And that's what thank yous do. And so I like to also point out that thank yous aren't just for right after the gift, they're for the duration that you're talking to that donor, right? So that when we ask again, they give again, right? So getting beyond the autoresponder, I'll be very honest, a lot of time when I meet with new clients, I ask them how they thank their donors, and 8 times out of 10, they tell me, well, they get an email autoresponder, and that's it. And then often when I see the autoresponder, it's text language, which is not a thank you, right? That is the bare minimum. And I like to say that, an ATM can also give me a receipt, right? But I want to be treated as a person, and I know you're a person. I want to interact with a person. So our donors are people, and they expect to be talking and giving to people. And they expect to have a relationship come back, right? So donors are also getting really, really savvy, and they know that to get that autoresponder, nobody had to even see their gift or acknowledge their gift. And so that's something we're working against, right? As donors are getting increasingly savvy and know that thing you sent was not an authentic email, that somebody saw their gift, went, oh, how nice, and sent them an email, right? And also, everyone in the nonprofit space is doing the automated email responders because it's so easy. Platforms like CauseVox make it really, really easy for you to get that autoresponder out, right? So it doesn't make you stand out in any way, shape, or form. So that is where a thank you and a gratitude process comes in for your organization. So let's talk about what that is. So creating a thank you process, you should have an autoresponder. I'm not saying turn off your autoresponder, right? You should have an autoresponder. But when a gift is made, it should trigger a process that's a series of steps. So the autoresponder does have a really special place. You do want to make sure that the donor makes the gift, hears immediately like, yes, we successfully received your gift. Thank you so much. But there are things you can do to make your autoresponder more effective. So ideally, if you have different campaigns that you're running or programs to give to, make sure that your autoresponder is customized to that effort. So if you only have one autoresponder, make sure that it's up to date on your current efforts. I have seen autoresponders that I got in 2017 that says, in 2016, we plan to, and that's because you haven't looked at your autoresponder in a while. So that's something that I would say, if you can only have one autoresponder that goes out, update it on a monthly basis. Make sure it reflects the latest things that you're working on and the latest things your donors would have heard from you. Put the tax language in the footer. So many acknowledge emails or letters that I see start with, thank you for your gift of $25 on January 5th, right? And that's so uninspiring, and you lost a chance to get their attention and get them to actually read the rest, because they're going to see it, they're going to say, oh, autoresponder, close, right? And you've lost an opportunity to engage your donor there. And then last, make the language of the autoresponder about the impact of the gift. So this could range from the impact of the people on your nonprofit. I loved actually one autoresponder that came from an executive director of an organization, and the first line was, "Kelly, you made my day." And I was like, that's awesome. I'm so glad I made that person's day, right? That was such a great way to open that autoresponder. Or you can start with the impact on the people that your nonprofit serves. So your gift will feed families in our community that are facing difficult times, right? Start with the impact they have had on your organization, right? Not the rote text language. So this is an example that I really like. It's very short, it's very sweet, but as you'll notice, it starts with thanks. It acknowledges that life is really difficult for a lot of people right now, and that they're grateful that they're choosing that nonprofit when they have so many other issues to worry about, right? And it says, we can't say we've never not been open. We can say our commitment to serving our community has never wavered. That's because of you, right? So they're making the donor feel seen and appreciated, right? And then they have the text language at the bottom. It's there. The donor can see it. They can use it for tax purposes, but it's down a ways. They're saying this is not the focus. The gift is not the focus. It's the impact of the gift that's the focus. All right. So what else can you do with autoresponders? That same organization, the Old Greenbelt Theater, has done a year-end campaign for years that they call the Real Magic of the Holidays campaign. And it helps fund the cinema's free film history programs. And so most of the emails that they send related to that campaign have like classic film lines. They're just peppered in classic film lines, which is really fun. And so in 2019, they set up 2 different autoresponders to go out when people donated to that campaign. One was for new donors, and it started with, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." It's a classic line from Casablanca, and the autoresponder was really focused on welcoming that donor into their giving community and talking about, like, because of you, this is going to happen, and this is what you can expect of our organization now that you've made this commitment to us. And so it was really lovely, and I liked how they set that up. And then for donors for whom they were renewing the gift, the email started with, "And the Oscar for Best Supporter goes to you." And it talked about how donors giving consistently helped them build a program, and what a renewed gift meant to the organization, and what giving over time meant to the organization. And so what I really, really liked was this helped cultivate their audiences. They knew where in the process these donors were, and it individualized it enough that donors felt recognized in the emails that were sent out. So beyond the autoresponder, what can you do that's not totally time intensive and isn't, sending people stickers and little tchotchkes and that kind of thing? The next thing I often add, if you're doing the autoresponder and you've customized your autoresponder, a lot of systems allow you to BCC yourself on the autoresponder and send a personal thank you, and it takes next to no time. So how do you make this happen as part of your operation? Make sure that when a donation comes into your system, whatever that system is, that it BCCs you on the autoresponder. And I've seen a lot of nonprofits use that as a feature to notify people that a gift has been made, but not to use it in a way to cultivate the donor. So let's figure that step out, right? Set up your system to BCC yourself, and then when you see those emails come in, just hit reply. A lot of those systems, when you're BCC'd, when you hit reply, it'll send an email to that donor, and then reply with just a quick personal thank you. As a frontline fundraiser earlier in my career, I had a draft email that was just in my inbox that had what I wanted to say in those emails. Just something like, Hi, donor's name. I saw your gift come in and I wanted to let you know how much we appreciate your support. With your gift, we'll be able to do more engaging educational programs for kids. If you have any questions about our work, please feel free to reach me at this email or my phone number. Thanks, Kelly. Right? It didn't take any time because I was literally hitting reply, copy, paste, put in donor name, right? Send. It took 2 seconds per donation. Um, but so often it was such a great way to kick off a relationship with that donor because they got this personal touch. So many donors got so excited and replied back, told me what inspired their gift, told me something that motivated them to give or why they loved our organization. It was so great. And I had never seen that kind of reply to an autoresponder, right? Um, and I know I hear you saying, Kelly, my inbox is overflowing. How would I do that? Right. Um, what you can do is make a smart folder in your email system so that any email that comes in with, one of your thank you subject lines or a certain, like a certain sender, whatever marks those emails as an autoresponder, set up a smart folder in your email inbox, and then what I used to do is just open that folder at the beginning or at the end of every day and shoot off those emails. Maybe it would be 5, maybe it would be 10, but it was a 2 to 5 minute process at most. And then the impact, it has such an outsized impact on the donors. So I highly, highly recommend that you do that. Then phone calls. I love phone calls. If you've attended any webinar I've done with CauseVox or any webinar I've done, you've heard me say this, but call your donors. This is a really unique area where small nonprofits can shine. Speaking as somebody who's worked at some of the bigger nonprofits, larger organizations do take the time to call their major donors, but often that's people giving $5,000, $10,000, right? For small organizations, sometimes for us, a $250 gift is a major gift, and that is huge and momentous for our organization. So I encourage you to take a page out of those bigger organizations' books and see, like, what is that for you? What feels like a transformational gift? And let's start calling those donors. So how do you do this? I've worked for organizations that only called their biggest donors. I've also set up processes in organizations where we call every single donor. It's just part of what we do. And I will say calling donors is the single most consistent thing I've done and seen nonprofits add that causes an increase in donor retention rates. Personally, one client I worked with, we took their donor retention rate from 60% to almost 80%. Just by adding phone calls into our thank you process. But I hear you, that feels like a monumental task. So how do you get it done? Set aside time at the beginning or end of every day and have a script that you keep somewhere on your desk or as a sticky on your laptop desktop. And then call. I used to love doing this at the end of every day. I actually miss it now that I'm a consultant. But I used to love ending every day as a frontline fundraiser. I had an alarm that went off at 4:30 that told me it was time to make donor calls, and I would spend the last 30 minutes of my workday making calls to anybody that had given that day. And it's just such a great way to end your day, because no matter what happened that day, talking to a donor or two that told me how much our nonprofit and our mission meant to them was just such a beautiful way to end the day. For set aside a dollar amount of what you would consider a bigger donation, and make sure that your executive director or a board member calls those folks, because it's a higher level touch and it's going to be more meaningful for that donor. What that level is will depend on your nonprofit, right? If a major gift is $250, make it $250. If a major gift for you isn't till you get to 1,000, that's fine too. If $50 is a huge gift, that qualifies, right? Whatever is a major gift for you. And then the other thing I will say is don't worry about making contact. That's the thing that makes call campaigns feel overwhelming, is, oh, I'm going to have to keep calling this person until they answer. Leaving voicemails, I have found, has the same impact on donors as actually talking to them. They just know that somebody took the time to dial their phone number and give them a call. And people don't tend to answer calls coming from an unknown number. So that's another thing, is it's not really worth it, because if they don't answer the first time because they don't recognize your number, keeping on calling them is just going to confirm it's spam. So just try once, either talk to them or leave a voicemail. Often I will say leave the message with a callback number so donors can call me back if they want to, and a fair number do. And again, it's just that quick, easy thing that can really, really blossom relationships. And also keep in mind, when you make these calls, your only job is to say thank you and to listen to the donor. This is your opportunity to learn more about the donor. Likening it to that romantic relationship, like they've made the gift, they've said, yes, I want a deeper relationship. So now commit to that relationship and listen to them and see what they need out of this relationship. You can learn so much about what inspires gifts and how to do your solicitations better in the future when you really sit and listen to your donors. And then do make sure that you put everything you learn into notes or an interactions section of your database, so that you remember next time you call them that they said, the program they really love the most is your children's program, or something like that, right? I also really like to have a question on standby in case the donor isn't talkative. And I'll give you my favorite, which is, what inspired you to make this gift to us? That question has gotten me gems of information in the past. And I really, really love asking donors that question. Okay, so the last thing people always ask about is mailing thank you notes. That's handwritten notes, letters, personal notes, all that kind of stuff. And I will say my thinking on this has really evolved over the years. And none so much as in the past year, with all the mail complications and everything. So the wisdom used to be that you should absolutely send a letter to your donors within 48 hours, to every donor that donates to you. But more and more donors complain about paper, the environmental impact, the cost. Email interactions are getting more and more normalized as a way to conduct business, right? So I've seen a lot of organizations getting away from mailed thank yous, and I honestly will say I'm on team, yeah, let's let them go away. But it comes a little bit from my position as a millennial, and I don't want more paper in my house, right? And I think as the younger tech savvy generations are coming up and becoming a bigger portion of the donor population, we're only going to see mail go away more. However, I do make a huge exception for handwritten thank yous. I've never seen those get complaints. And it shows that you took time, right? I think the thing that people balk at with mail is you printed that on a printer, maybe signed it, but probably didn't, and just shoved it in an envelope. Like, how much thought did that take? Whereas thank yous, handwritten thank you notes, show another level. This is all about level of how much did you think about this donor when you reached out to them, right? So you can set a minimum level and say anybody who gives above this level gets a handwritten thank you note from this person or that person, right? One thing I really like to do with nonprofits is print custom cards for the organization and use those. Because it's a nice reminder. It's something they can put. I personally, when I get these from organizations, I put them up on my wall. I love these things. So getting custom cards for your organization is great. And the other thing you can do with these is leverage your board members to help you out. So one of the things I like to do is, at the first board meeting of the year, I will give each board member a stack of 20 cards and a book of 20 stamps, and then have all of our board members leave the meeting with that pack. And then as donations come in, I will email the board member with the name and address of the donor, and often I won't even mention how much they gave, just name and address. The board member will write the note and then take a picture of the note so that I can put that in our database and know that it got sent. And then the board member will send it. So it's really very little work for your staff and a great thing for board members to do. So that's one of my best tips for getting your board engaged in fundraising. But the bottom line is all of this needs a clear system, right? Or else it's just chaos. You're trying to do all of this, right? So I encourage you to figure out for your organization what level of giving entitles a donor to what level of acknowledgement. So who will do what in what time. And I have a template of this spreadsheet that I will be sharing with you tomorrow that you can kind of use this to talk to your team about, how do we want to do this? Who's doing what, right? So my advice is that you agree on who will do what at which level, right? So this, you see gift level under $100, the office manager replies with a personal email. From under 250, but over 100, the office manager will still do a personal email, but then the development manager will do a phone call, right? And so on and so forth, getting higher level touches for bigger donations. However, what I will say, while it's really good to diffuse the work across your staff and your board, make sure one single person owns the process and make sure everything happens. So one of the things I used to do as a frontline manager, fundraising manager, working with our office manager, was the office manager would pull a list of donations from the prior week and then write a list for each staff member that needed to be involved. Phone number or phone call, these people, here's their phone number. Handwritten note, these people, and hand that out to staff, right? So it was her job to distribute it and make sure it happened, but everybody pitched in so it wasn't all on one person. And then use your database. Some donor CRMs now and databases make this easier by having donations trigger workflows or set up activities or tasks or different things like that. So I would encourage you to talk to the support people at whatever database or donor CRM you use and see if they have a recommendation on how to do this, because I think most of them actually do know how to set that up within their system, but it varies widely between databases, so I don't want to give one prescription for how to do that. Okay, so now we've gotten the gift, we've said thank you immediately. And unfortunately, that's where I tend to see the fall off, right? As we're very super grateful right after the gift, and then donors don't hear from us again until we want to ask. So saying thank you needs to be a year-round thing. And that's what I start to call a gratitude process. How are you going to thank your donors throughout the year? And so I want to go over some of my favorite things to do for donors. And I really, when I say gratitude, saying thank you throughout the year, it's not sending them a mug, it's not sending them a sticker. Donors want engagement, they want a relationship, right? And there are lots of really great ways to do that. One of my favorite things is board thank you call campaigns. The reason I love them so much is you cultivate your board by having them cultivate your donors. When I've been a frontline fundraiser, my board members love and look forward to these call campaigns because I almost always have them come back, say after they've made their calls and saying things like, oh, I heard this great story from this donor, or wow, this donor just loves this thing that we do, right? The donors cultivate your board in a way because your donors love you and they're not in the day-to-day details. And sometimes your board needs to hear that to get excited to do the work. Because I know I've been there with the board members that don't do anything. They barely show up to the meetings, right? Like I've been there. And that's where thank you calls can actually be really powerful in getting your board excited to do more work. So when people ask me, how do I engage my board in fundraising? Almost always I say, this is your best first step in getting the board engaged in fundraising. It's really rewarding and it's an easy thing to do. Most people know how to call somebody and say thank you, but you can also provide them with scripts and that kind of thing if they're uncomfortable. Um, but also, one of the things I like to think about is if your board members aren't willing to even call and thank your donors, what are they doing on your board, right? This feels like the very bare minimum they should be doing to help your fundraising program. And so that's also, I've used this as a litmus test sometimes for organizations when we have an unhelpful board member is see if they'll do the thank you call. And if they don't, then it's time to have a conversation with that board member and say, like, are you sure this is where you want to be and where you want to be investing your time? And sometimes it leads to helpful conversations where that person realizes, no, no, I don't want to be here, and be ready to see that too. Then in February, I like to send an impact report and a tax receipt. And so this isn't your big long annual report. I like doing annual reports. Candace will tell you at the end more about a upcoming annual report, impact report webinar we'll be doing together. But it's just a quick reminder to your donors about what they accomplished through your organization in the prior year. So sometimes it's a quick one-page letter from the ED, or it's a few paragraphs of text with some impact metrics and a pretty graphic, kind of like the one in this image here. But the main reason I use it is to resend the tax receipt for donors. And I like to have some sort of PS that says, in case you've misplaced it, here is your tax receipt for your giving in 2020. And I have gotten so many thank yous from donors over the years for doing this, because inevitably they have lost their tax receipt or can't find it in their email. And I do this in like mid-February because it feels like a time when most people are starting to gear up for their taxes, but they're probably not done yet for most people. So it's a really helpful reminder to your donors. Send in February, I already said that. And then if you do plan to do a spring fundraising campaign, it's a really nice reminder of what your organization does. It's a really nice high quality thank you touch before you do a spring campaign and ask them for more money, right? So it's a great way to just say, hey, thanks again for being there for us before you solicit them again. And then quarterly reports and calls. This is something I've done it in a number of organizations, and it sounds so time consuming, but once you do it a few times, it really can become a very rote thing. And this isn't even something as elaborate or formulaic as a newsletter. I see so much on nonprofit Facebook groups or things like, how do I do a good newsletter? How do I do a good newsletter, right? And do we do it weekly, monthly, right? We're always wondering about that. I like to do quarterly reports and calls. And what this is it's an update to your donors, and it's a chance for you to say thank you and just tell them, hey, that thing we asked you to give towards, this is where we are on that project, that kind of thing. So it's showing a certain amount of accountability and responsibility to your donors. You're acknowledging that they are not just donors. They didn't just hand you a check and expect you to walk off, that they've made an investment in you, and you're reporting back on that investment and reminding them that their support matters. It can also be a great soft ask point to say, hey, and we kicked off this campaign and so far it's doing well, but we could always use more support, right? It's a soft ask point wrapped into the thank you process. And it's something that, oops, sorry, I clicked forward. For one-time donors, a soft ask could be, you can amplify your gift by joining our monthly giving program. I'd be delighted to tell you more about it, right? And I like to send this through a mass email marketing platform, but make it look like a personal email. So turn off the headers, don't have graphics, it's just plain text. And sometimes it's often what I'll do at nonprofits where we have a program director for each of our programs, like our children's program, our women's program, our men's program, something like that, right? The head of each of those departments, I tell them quarterly, a 1-paragraph update on your program is due. And I amalgamate those and I send them out, and I send it out like I would a personal email to donors and just say, dear donor first name, thank you again for your support of our organization. I wanted to give you a quick update on where our programs are. Here's the latest on our children's program, one paragraph. Here's the latest on our women's program, one paragraph, right? And then for donors at a certain level, I will invite them to a call where they can ask me questions about that program. I started doing this when conference calls were a thing and before Zoom was a thing, but now you can do it on Zoom and have even more face-to-face engagement, right? But these are just a couple examples of my favorite donor, what I'm going to call benefits, because I think too often when we think about donor benefits, we think about stuff, right? What you want to do to start a gratitude program, gratitude process, is decide what your donors get for different giving levels. And then this is not necessarily a public facing program. It's not a formal giving circle program or anything like that. If you're just getting started with something like this, I actually like to say keep it internal and hold yourself accountable to it until you absolutely know you can be accountable to sending a quarterly impact report, and then publish it as a benefit of giving, right? Make sure you can do it before you tell donors you're going to do it. And again, when I say donor benefits, I do not mean stuff. I'm not talking t-shirts, stickers, none of that. I'm talking about engagement. Good donor cultivation feels individual, but it's something you can implement on a large scale, like sending those quarterly impact reports that are plain text, right? It feels personal, but you can send a lot of those in a small period of time. It's also, you want to pack a punch. You want to engage your donor in your mission and make them feel like a really important part of your team. That's what a good donor touch does. So this is an example. And again, I have this spreadsheet to share with you. So look for my email tomorrow. But this is a donor benefits chart that actually was one that I ran in with a nonprofit where I was the only fundraiser. So I know it's doable. And this is, again, solicit feedback from your organization. Hey, to do these impact things, I'm going to need a paragraph from every program director quarterly. Does that feel like something everybody can do and buy into? So I figured out what steps I need to take and who gets what for what giving level. So the thank you process is triggered every time we get a gift at that level. And the gratitude process is what we do throughout the year in those batches with those donors. And then how to actually implement it, right? That's always the question I get is, oh, that was a lovely webinar. How do I actually do that, right? I'm all about the how you actually dig in and get your hands dirty and do it, right? So if you decide what benefits you're going to give your donors, then you can map it out over the course of the year. And I tend to think a good aim is for kind of your top 2 tiers of donors, they should hear from you with a high quality touch like once a month, and then quarterly for everybody below that. And then I know this would be the latter half of the year. I know this feels like a lot, but once you do it a few times, it becomes very, very routine. And I will tell you the nonprofit that I did this with, again, I was the only person working with individual giving, and we had like an 80% donor retention rate at that organization because of this, right? It wasn't that we were super brilliant at solicitations. It was we were really good at gratitude. And that made the difference. We actually changed very, very little of how we solicited donors. So that gives you some information right there. So what makes a good thank you touch? First of all, you're creating a personal connection with that donor. They see themselves in the interaction. You want to reference what prompted the gift. That's something that can help it feel individual. And that can be as easy as acknowledging what program they made the gift to. I like to say, delight the donor. They should be excited to hear from you. And that's where the autoresponder, most people are not super stoked to get an autoresponder, right? So building on that, how can you make the donor see your name and be like, oh, Kelly's talking to me again, yay, right? Because I had so many donors that, like, because I did thank you calls, The first time I did thank you calls, nobody answered. The second time I did thank you calls, so many people answered because they recognized my number, right? And then that just built out those donor relationships. The main thing you want to do in a good thank you touch is confirm that your donor made the right choice and made a difference by giving to your organization. That is what they want, right? They don't want a receipt. It's helpful on taxes, but like it is not the main reason that most people give. They want to know that the investment they made in your organization is going to pay off. And then last, make the donor the hero, not your organization. It's something that we are not great at in the nonprofit world because we work so hard and we love what we do and we want to focus on what we did. But the donor feels the same way. They love what you do and they want to know what their gift did. So I like to say, try this on for size. Here's what I mean. So this is an organizational centered statement. Your support helped us feed 100 families this year. Donor centered is you fed 100 families this year with your gift, right? Really, the main change is your support helped and you fed, right? They took action. The second one puts the donor in the driver's seat and makes them feel central to that accomplishment. So what I say is, at the very least, start scanning your fundraising materials for the word helped and just take that out, right? That's a very easy first step. Just take helped out, right? Because I really feel like donors don't help us do the work. They are how we can do the work, right? If we had no donors, we would have no salaries, right? And we wouldn't be doing this work. What not to do. These are excuses I've heard over the years. Do not use mass communication as an excuse not to personalize. When people say, oh, well, everybody will know that, that it's mass communication. I want to reference you back to that Real Magic of the Holidays autoresponder that sent a different email to the first time donor than the recurring donor. The way they set that up in their database was if we get a gift and the person is in the database, they get the recurring donor one. If we get a donation and that person is not in the database, they get the first time donor one. Did that mean it was perfect? No, we had donors returning that put in a different email address or something like that and created a new donor profile and they got the new donor welcome thing. But did we not do that because the system wasn't perfect? No, it was right enough of the time. And when it wasn't right, donors forgave us because we were trying, right? So don't let perfect be the enemy of just getting it done, right? The second thing, don't ask for a second gift in a thank you touch. I've heard other very wise consultants that I really respect advocate that you absolutely should take every opportunity to ask. But I really don't think that should be done. And it's kind of for a very personal reason. When I had just graduated from grad school, I was in a bunch of college debt and I was working for a small nonprofit that really couldn't pay me much of a salary. But I really, really cared about this one organization and I saved up to make a sizable donation to them, which it felt huge to me then. I think it was maybe $100, right? But it felt like a ton of money to me. And I donated it and I was so proud that I could do it. And the thank you note I got in response was an ask with a remittance envelope. And I was devastated. I was so hurt. I was so betrayed. I was already a fundraiser at that point. And so I actually reached out to them and told them what them doing that meant to me. I got no response. I got no response. They still send me appeals. They have not gotten $1 from me since then because it was very hurtful to make a gift and then get, yeah, can we have more now? It just didn't feel great, right? So don't do that. So then the last thing is about the donor benefits. Don't promise something and then not deliver, right? That's the main way you can undermine your fundraising program is by promising your donors something that you don't follow through on. So one last thing, I know we covered a lot of ground here and I know, because I've done this myself, is watch a webinar and you're like, that's amazing, I'm going to do all of it. And then you just get so bogged down in it, and then you don't implement anything. So don't think that you have to do this all at once. This is an ideal to strive for. But you're going to get a recording of this. Keep watching it. Watch it quarterly and see what else you can implement. So challenge yourself and look at this and say, what is one thing I can change this week to make my donors feel more special? And then once you get the hang of that, what's the next thing you can do next month and the month after? Before you know it, you're going to have built this out, right? So do what you can. So the last thing is, if you want to work with me, I am a nonprofit coach. So I love, love, love working with small nonprofits to help them grow their programming. One of my most popular programs is an 8-week program called Getting Started with Individual Giving. It is an 8-week program. I do 3 sessions with you per week. This is not a course. This is one-on-one time with me. And by the end of that 8 weeks, you'll have an 18-month strategic fundraising plan that you can use to report to your board and hold you accountable. And I help you map it out onto a calendar. It can help guide your work over the next year to 18 months. And then my most popular one is a weekly coaching session. It's 1 hour once a week. That's $300. And then I do monthly coaching, which is 1 session per month. That is $75. And that one I really recommend for organizations that you're pretty well established in individual giving, but you just want an outside person to bounce ideas off of, right? That's not a great one if you're trying to figure things out. So thank you so much. Oh, I forgot to mention, let me go back. Do email me if you want to get started with me. It's kelly@fitnonprofit.com. I will also be emailing you tomorrow. You can reply to that email. If you want to get started, I have a wait list. I can start taking clients again in February. But if you want to get started with me, go ahead and shoot me that email so I can get you on my dockets. And thank you so much. And at that, I will hand it back to Candace.
Thank you so much, Kelly. There is so many great insights. And yeah, I think like you said, I think this is something that all of you guys can come back to and continue to learn from, because there's always going to be more ways that you can incorporate these really effective and fantastic types of ways of engaging and thanking donors. So yeah, and best part is then you can keep developing those relationships with your donors once they stick around for a second time. So you get to keep them for a long time and continue building that relationship. So thank you so much, Kelly, for all these great insights. I hope you guys do take her up on the offer to get some one-on-one coaching. I know a lot of our customers have used Kelly and have had really fantastic experiences. So yeah, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to let you know about some upcoming intensives that Kelly is going to be running with us. The first one is coming up in February on the 11th. It's a 2-hour intensive all about how really digging into the details of data analysis and using data to really chart your fundraising and how to grow it. So for those who aren't so familiar with using data for your nonprofit, this is a really good time to get that introduction. And so I would love to hear if you're interested in that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. Just let us know in the next few seconds if you're interested in this really, really valuable, I think you'll get a lot of information out of it, intensive course. And so the intensives are paid, but you'll get an email with the pre-registration option, which is discounted. So keep an eye out for that. Should be about $50 for the pre-registration, and you get 2 full hours of Kelly and all of her amazing insights.
If this wasn't enough.
Yes. Okay, thanks everyone who's responded. I'm gonna end the poll. It looks like it's a resounding yes. So we'll keep you all updated on when pre-registration opens. Fantastic. Okay, great. Thank you all for sticking around with us. Another quick option is the upcoming impact report. So Kelly mentioned impact reporting, and doing this even, on a annual basis. And so that is coming up in early March. If you are interested in learning more about how you can really assemble an effective annual and impact report for your organization, for you to better to help you, then craft and implement a lot of these donor retention strategies that we've went over today. So if you're interested, this is going to be another 2-hour session, real deep dive, and it is going to be another pre-registration option with the discount. So for those who are interested, we can keep you updated on that. Lovely, really good responses. Thank you, everyone. And for those of you who have stuck around with us for so long today, we're coming right up on 3 o'clock. I do want to get to a few questions, but thank you all. We're talking about thank yous. Thank you all for joining us. This has been really wonderful to have you all part of our community here. I feel like we've developed a nice community, and it's nice to see a lot of familiar names. And yeah, we would love to continue chatting with you. All right, I'm going to end the poll, and then we're going to go on to a couple of free things that are coming up. So we have a couple of free webinars. If you're interested, we have a webinar that's all about how you can actually practically implement fundraising with CauseVox over the next year to really grow your digital fundraising. So we're going to be going over top fundraising strategies that we saw that worked well in the last year, and then kind of expanding on that and showing you how CauseVox can help. So if you're interested in using CauseVox, or just interested in hearing more about what strategies worked really well on our platform, you can take a look at that webinar. It's free, and it's tomorrow at 2 p.m. That's going to be recorded as well. So if you can't make it, no worries. You can just sign up and you'll get the recording. And then also, I'm really excited. Next week, we're having our nonprofit leader panel. So our nonprofit leader panels come up where we sit down with a few nonprofits to learn more about how they were able to grow fundraising for themselves. So we're talking with the National Hospice Regatta Alliance and Woven Health Clinic to discuss what made their 2020 fundraising successful and how that informed their 2021 plans. So it's a really great way for you to learn from very practical examples and fundraisers that are just like you, that have really been able to succeed in fundraising growth. And so it's a great way to just hear from people who are in your shoes directly and what is working well for them. So I put those links in the chat. Feel free to check those out. Okay, and then lastly, anyone else that is interested in CauseVox, we'd love to hear from you. I'm gonna have an option for you to book a one-on-one consultation if you'd like to sit down with us and just chat through your fundraising needs and explore if CauseVox could be a good fit. So you'll see that in the follow-up email tomorrow. I think that is it for my spiel. And yeah, we can take a few minutes here to go over questions. Thank you all for sticking with us. Let's tackle a few. There's been a lot of really great questions throughout this whole throughout the whole presentation, so I've been trying to keep a close eye on the chat just to pick out a few. Let's see. So many questions. So one that I saw from Amina, was kind of more of a statement, but kind of a question around. I think the problem I run into with the donor centered language is that the org staff feels like it's inaccurate. Like the your support helps. They feel like that's a more accurate depiction of what donors are doing. And so I guess, like, how would you recommend getting some buy-in from your team in order to use that kind of language?
I mean, I think talking to your staff about, our donors are part of the picture, right? Without this funding, would we be doing this, right? So I think it's turning that on its head as like, yes, we are out here, we're on the front lines, we're doing the hard work, right? But that doesn't mean that the donors are meaningless or less a part of the equation, right? Because they're paying our salaries, they are providing the things we need, right, to do this work. And if we were a bunch of people who cared about this issue with no money, would we be here right now? Right? Or would we have the impact we're having? Right? And so that's a lot of the language I use with staff members to talk to them about getting comfortable with that. And also helping them understand that, like, because we're saying the donors are important or critical to our mission doesn't mean our staff isn't. And that's often what I see the staff problem is like, no, but we did the work. Like, yes, you did do the work. It's wonderful, right? Um, and that's the thing when you're in relationship with your donors. And also, I have staff members, program people do the thank you calls on occasion, right? Because I want them to understand that the donors do value their work. That's not something I fit into here, but having your program staff call your donors as well um, help them feel seen and appreciated by those donors and helps bridge that gap to help them understand and get them more comfortable with that
Mm.
language of you fed 100 people, right? Like we did it all together, right? But when they hear that the donors do know that, right? It's just helping them feel like they are part of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good tip, Kelly. Definitely so many practical insights here, which is great. Cool. And so Lauren asked about some ideas for nonprofits who are not in like direct services space, so more along the lines of advocacy and providing support to people, whether it's like legal services or something along those lines where it's a little
Mhm,
less material.
mhm.
What would you recommend for thanking donors?
Yeah, so when you get the recording and the slides, go back to the donor thank you or the gratitude process that I had. That was actually one that I developed for advocacy organizations specifically because it is so hard for advocacy organizations to really tell donors what their impact is, right? And so one of the things I've done, my background is in advocacy organizations. I love advocacy organizations; they're hard to fundraise for. That is bringing donors more into the process, right? Even if you can't say, we had this impact because we're trying to, you know, build a consensus for this legislation or this issue or something, right? That if you bring them into the process and let them see the things that have gone well, it's the same sharing with them the things that make your staff excited, like, oof, we got this legislator to like meet with us, or we got 100 signatures on this petition, right? That's something that you can tout out to your donors. If you're excited about it, your donors will be too. And sometimes you need to couch it a little in why it's significant when you write to your donors, because they're not necessarily in the process so much that they will intuit why it's important. But that's a great way to report impact back for advocacy organizations, even when it's hard to point to, like, we passed this legislation, or we had this outcome or whatever. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, absolutely. No, yeah, I know you have such a big like so many experiences with advocacy organizations, so I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where my heart is.
Yeah. Awesome. I like this question a lot. Amanda asks, is it appropriate to ask a donor for a referral? So asking them to bring in other donors? And how do you suggest doing that?
Okay. Well, one that's like that's peer to peer. Talk talk to me and Candace at the same time. No, no, it's absolutely appropriate, and that's part of when you build that relationship with your donor. Sometimes it happens authentically, right? And so when your donor feels thanked, when your donor feels included, and you're making those touch points, they're getting personal emails, they're getting phone calls from you, it's something you can slip into the conversation. It's something I've done sometimes in like the third interaction or something when I've had that personal, like we've had an email back and forth and I feel like I'm getting to know this person. Sometimes it's appropriate at that point to say, hey, would you do you know anybody else who might be interested in our organization? Or I used to love hosting um, asking donors if they'd host a small dinner. We would have to wait till we get through COVID to do that, but I would have donors do that. Maybe they could host a Zoom call with a few of their friends with you. But having those kind of personal options always feels really appropriate to me, especially when a donor, when you've had a few interactions with a donor and you can tell that person is really highly engaged. And that's why it's so important to do those personal touch, because otherwise you have no idea if they're personally engaged, right? But the personal touches really help you weed out those people who can be your allies in doing outreach to other donors.
Yeah, absolutely. I also just pasted a link in the chat if you want to learn more about peer to peer. It's just our kind of basic article we share with everyone just to kind of get a little bit of an introduction into the concept of peer to peer. So that is in the chat. Yeah, kind of a practical question here. I like it. Brandy asked, when a donor makes the original donation, will we need to ask permission to continue to contact them? Just sort of there's anti-spam legislation. So I guess how do practically organizations navigate that?
Yeah. So when a donor gives you a donation, ideally you want to have that checkbox of like, I'd like to hear more from your organization, right? I think it's like standard, right, Candace? If you use CauseVox, it's kind of in there already. Um, so what you want to do is make sure you have that point that they can uncheck. I like to make sure it's auto checked and that they have to uncheck it if they don't want to hear from you, right? Um, but then from there, if they've opted in, then yeah, you've got their permission. Often I will add a phone number to the donation form, so I've got the phone number. People can get around it by putting in zeros, and donors who really don't want to hear from you on the phone will do that, right? But but yeah, it's a nice way, and often like when you're doing personal emails, when you're doing calls, people don't feel spammed, right? They feel included, right? And I'm not saying like, email them a personal email every week, right? When I was talking about those impact reports, it's quarterly, right? When it's a personal reply to a gift response, it's when you get that gift, right? There are just these certain touch points, right? I don't think you're gonna feel like your donors aren't going to feel spammed, right? Especially when it's personal communications. More often, it's people get mad when it's, you know, robot calls and tons of clearly mass email. When it's those personal touches, I've never really had donors get upset about it. I think in my entire career, in all 12 years, I had one person get upset that I called to say thank you, and I'm not sure what that person's problem was. They were having a bad day, I guess. It's very rare that somebody gets mad when you call to thank them. And actually, most of the experiences my donors have is like pleasant surprise. They're like, wait, you're calling me? But I only gave you $100. Why are you calling me? And it's that like, wow, like you must really appreciate me if you're taking the time to call me, right? So I think that's the thing. High quality touches don't inspire that, ugh, unsubscribe. But that said, if you do call somebody and they say, hey, you know what, stop calling me, honor that, put it in the database, delete their email or delete their phone number. Respect it if they ask you not to do it. But I will say it's very, very rare with high quality thank you touches that people get upset about it.
Hmm. And yeah, and also Brandy also mentioned that in Canada it might be a little different as far as like
Mm,
spam legislation.
that's true.
I'm not totally up to speed on Canadian spam legislation. I probably should be. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think just like even having a follow-up email with like double opt-in, just like making sure that they want to be part of your list is good. And maybe having some, yeah, more sort of personalized touch to that email, I think could
Mhm.
go a long way. So that they don't feel like they're about to get spammed with 1,000 email
For sure.
asks all the time.
Right, for sure.
Cool. So I know that we kind of have to wrap things up. We're about 10 minutes over. And thank you all for joining. Kelly, do you want to take maybe one more question?
Sure, sure.
Okay, great. Um, let's see. There's still so many good questions. Also, anyone that's still with us, you are going to get the slides and the recording tomorrow, so don't worry about that. Yeah, I think I think this is a good one. When you receive a donation in memory of a relative, should they like how should you kind of craft some communications around that? So automatically add them to your newsletter list, write a personal thank you, just any more specific advice on tribute gifts.
Yeah, the main thing I tend to do, especially if it's hard to get the autoresponder to like mention tribute gifts, is I will make sure I know that that's been done when I reply to the autoresponder or when I call that donor. And in that interaction, say, and I see you made this gift in memory of so and so. If you don't know who that is, ask them who it is and why it was meaningful to give to your organization in honor of that person. It shows that you are interested in honoring that person too, and that's another step in that relationship building. And so that's often because sometimes it's hard to work them into autoresponders. So if you can't get your autoresponder to do that, making sure that it's mentioned in the personal communications. I've seen different ways nonprofits do that. So if that's something that you see a lot with your organization, I know like a lot of health organizations see that. If that's something your organization sees a lot, I'd be happy to send you more information about that. You can email me. It's just Kelly, Kelly, at fitnonprofit.com. You can feel free to shoot me an email and I can send you some other ideas.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all. I know that there's so many questions that we haven't gotten to. So sorry if we didn't get to your question today. You can email Kelly at fitnonprofit.com, or you can always shoot me an email as well. And I'd be happy to connect with you and help answer your questions. I know there's a few around donor management systems, any suggestions, and some things about reporting. So I would just encourage you to shoot us a follow-up email and we'd love to connect with you. So thank you all for all of your great questions and great responses and engagement and attention. So it's great to have all of you still on. Yeah, well, thank you again. Thank you, Kelly. This was wonderful. Appreciate
Awesome.
all the
Yeah,
great
no, this is
insights.
always fun. Always fun.
Always good. All right. Well, awesome. Thanks all for joining and have a great rest of your day. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Kelly. Talk to you soon.
Yep.